Hello and welcome to the third video where it's related to the Luna 4 Archon quest. Frankly, I never made my videos like this because usually I just put them in one single video and be done with it. But Luna 4 Archon quest is the first time ever that made my mind just spiral and have a lot of things to yap on. The first video was about Columbina's strange birth logic, the second video was my thoughts on the overall experience of the Archon quest, and for today's video, we need to talk about Sandrone specifically. As you all already know, Sandrone will become playable and was teased as a puddle of as a reflection in the water. There's a very good reason why that's the case, hence why this video is made. Today, we'll be doing a deep dive on Sandrone's background, her role in the Archon quest, and what we can expect when she's returned as a playable character. Also, I highly recommend you finish the Narcissan Court's questline first because you get a better experience of this video if you do that. As always, don't forget to give this video a like and comment so the channel can be noticed by the algorithm. My name is Glitchxcity and I make lore and commentary videos on this channel to keep you company. Lantern Rite is coming and we are introduced to tnbee, who is a lunar crystallized UDPS and synergizes well with Columbina. Alongside her is Iglua, who is tnbee's dedicated support. Since Columbina's banner is still up in a few days, you might want to consider getting her, and if you need extra promo gems for her, then allow me to introduce you to Loot Bar. Loot Bar is a reliable site for a fast, secure, and super reliable top-up experience for a Genesis crystal. Additionally, they provide 25% discounts compared to normal prices in game and supports consoles as well. Loot Bar provides a special discount each update and also a guaranteed bundle, so be sure to check it out. Once you start your top up, they will only ask for your UID, nothing else, so your privacy is guaranteed and your items will arrive to your accounts in less than 2 minutes. If you like Miliastra Wonderland, you can also top up Kernel Nexus in Loot Bar the same way as you do it with Genesis crystals. Over 30,000 Trustpilot reviews are showing their satisfaction after using Loot Bar, and if you have any problem with your transaction, their customer service is always available if you need assistance. Other than Genshin Impact, Loot Bar is also available for other games as well, including the newly added Archon Zenfield. Click the link in the description below and register to get an additional 10% coupon that can be combined with all other discounts. Now let's continue with the content. Who is Sandrone? Is she a human or is she a robot? Is she an Oceanid or is she an AI? Is she Marianne or is she someone else? I think this question is often asked when people talk about Sandrone. So for context, the main theory that people used to have is that Sandrone is Marianne being remade as a puppet by Elan Giatan, and Polonia is where Elan put his consciousness into. Some even say that Elan is Sandrone herself. Unfortunately, this has never been the case. Everything that we know and theorize about Sandrone are both debunked, but the basis of these theories do hold some truth. Personally, I really like how they write her in the end because the idea of her being Elan is just freaky to me. Especially that Sandrone is modeled after his deceased stepsister. Look, even though the Fatui are antagonistic entities, that doesn't make it look less creepy for a man wanting to be his own sister with his questionable morality. Like I said, even though the theory is debunked, the basis of the theory is indeed true. Sandrone is related to Narcissan Court's Institute, Marianne and Elan Giatan, but not in a way that we expected. After the Archon quest ends, Arlecchino told us that she left Sandrone's notebook on the Traveler's Table in the flagship tavern, and it has a lot of interesting lore bits in there. With that, sit back and get comfy as I'll tell you the full story of Sandrone. Sandrone is a puppet created by Elan Giatan and is modeled after his deceased stepsister. She was created in the memory of Marianne. It was never explained specifically when it all happened, but we do know that she was created during Elan's 65th birthday and sometime after the cataclysm from 500 years ago. Elan used to give her a lot of notebooks, and every time he does that, Sandrone often discards them. The journal that she gave us via Arlecchino, however, is the only notebook that she didn't discard as she learned how to record and write diaries on her own. Elan is taken aback with that decision and apparently he was on the verge of crying. Just a side note, I read Sandrone's notebook on the wiki right because I have a Doodoo laptop and it can't multitask optimally. While reading that, YouTube autoplay suddenly plays Pokemon Mystery Dungeon OST called Memories Returned, basically one of the most depressing OSTs in the Mystery Dungeon series. You have no idea how sad I am reading that notebook while listening to that. It's literally double kill on my end. You'll understand as we go why I even cried reading all of this. Also, before we continue, Sandrone's name was given by the Fatui as far as I remember, and not given by Alan. So it's possible that Sandrone was initially a nameless puppet or named something else. However, to make it easier for me and for you guys, I'll keep referring to her as Sandrone. It is implied in the first few diary entries that she was an ordinary machine at first without any emotions. Gradually, she learns how to feel anger, sadness, happiness, laughter, and all of human emotions that one can think of, and this pleases Alan. All except one: guilt. To Alan, this one specific emotion is hard for machines and animals to understand, and because of that, Sandrone has no reason to learn the feeling of guilt. Alan doesn't seem to have any problem with it either, and even though Sandrone was modeled after Marianne, he never deemed Sandrone as Marianne either because her behavior is nothing like his sister, nor did Sandrone feel the same way. But even without guilt, Sandrone does have one desire. She wants her creator, Alan, to be healthy again. Shortly after, Alan introduced a new invention of his to Sandrone called Polonia, a machine that is made to calculate the unknown. As to what that unknown is, Alan himself is not certain what he meant. Regardless, Polonia is constantly being upgraded by Alan, but he was never satisfied with the result either. Because Polonia has no feelings like Sandrone, she never deemed Polonia as a family or a kin. During the testing, Alan asks Sandrone if the fate of the world can be calculated, and Sandrone only answered, "Use a detector." One day, Alan told Sandrone his wishes. He wished that once Alan dies, Sandrone can travel on his behalf and broaden her horizon. Sandrone, however, shut this wish down, but Alan himself doesn't seem to be hurt with that answer, as he also finds this wish of his a bit ridiculous. However, he has another wish, and that is to save the world. This in itself should be self-explanatory if you play the Narcissus Court's questline, where Alan and Renee have a desire to save the world themselves, but with a different ways of thinking. Sandrone asked Alan if he wanted to inherit this wish to her, but he quickly said no and wanted her to be free with whatever she desired. When asked what she wanted to do in her life, Sandrone only said that she doesn't know yet. A few days after that conversation, Alan passed away. He left Sandrone a small sum of money, Polonia, and his notebook to which he asked Sandrone to burn them to avoid theft. Of course, as to what we learned in Luna 2, Sandrone studied all of them first before burning them away. As for Polonia, Alan asks Sandrone to leave him within Fontaine's Research Institute's care, but Sandrone is against this idea and takes him to herself. During the funeral, Polonia takes care of the house while Sandrone remains in Alan's grave until midnight, where only Moon is her companion. Perhaps this is the main reason why Sandrone is very attached with Columbina, because she reminds her of Alan, who Sandrone also finds as her parental figure. Oh, just a side note, it was raining when Alan's funeral was happening, meaning New Valette was crying when all of that happened, and Sandrone found it very annoying. I just have to share that to the class. The next day after the funeral, Sandrone left Alan's house and brought Polonia with her. In order to avoid suspicion that Polonia is Alan's last research, Sandrone modified him until he is more as an attendant than a calculation machine. She then left for Snezhnaya, where she was recruited by the Tsaritsa. Apparently the pay is good. I wonder how much the Tsaritsa paid her. Honestly, I forgot that being a harbinger is still a legitimate job in Genshin, and I forgot being paid monthly is still a thing in this game. Regardless, this is where Sandrone met her fellow Harbingers, and we actually get a pretty good timeline on what's been going on with the Fatui during our adventure across the 7 nations. Prior to our journey, Sandrone created a project that was already approved by the Tsaritsa. It seems this project is related to Polonia and world calculations, but I'll talk about that later. Despite being approved, however, her project was stuck within financial approvals. It turns out that the tourist plan was approved financially by Pantalone, leaving Sandrone obviously agitated. We also learned that the Fatui holds constant lectures, with Piero and Pulcinella being the lecturer for the most part. During our journey in Liyue, it is implied that Tartaglia did not contact the Fatui for 2 weeks, likely referring to what happened during his character story as he returned with scratches. For a reminder, Tartaglia brought his brother Tucker to a ruined guard factory and was heavily injured after that battle. On the same day when Tartaglia returned, Colombina and Dottore were away somewhere, likely the time when Dottore conducted his experiment with Kuvaki even further. A few weeks after that, Rosaline, or Signora in this case, was concluded dead and is likely written the same day when Winter Night Lazo happened. There is a huge timeline jump after this, and because the next entry talks about the Narcissus Quartz Institute, it's safe to assume that this is the time when Sandrone found her interest in Curve, a lie detecting machine created by Mosso Lombroso that was supposed to surpass Alan's creation called Seymour, a dog robot to aid his sister Marianne. For a brief recap, this robot plays in one of Fontaine's world quests, where we help a Melusine named Talochard to find the missing Steambird mascot Sir Arthur. The culprit, Jank, was tasked by Sandrone to retrieve this robot, but was extremely upset when she found out that Curve eventually blew itself up. Jank was punished by Sandrone by cutting his tongue off with a leather, apologizing to the Traveler, Paimon, and Talochard. Shortly after, she sends her underlings to retrieve Curve's core and bring it to Notcry. That core, however, was then stolen in Notcry by the Fruity Order, basically a certain group of treasure hoarders that we met in Fontaine, and that core was then hidden at one of Aino's machine. Aino then repurposed the machine as Chart Lombro because it kept overheating when it tries to remember its name, and like what Mosso said, it did gain a sentient on its own just like Seymour. Regardless, the entry was said to have been edited more recently, likely referring to her calculating on how to find Colombina in the recent Archon quest. We then learned that Capitano chose to stay in Atlan, which is a good thing to assume that Capitano will be back eventually. This means that he remains dormant from his position and is a very good reason why the Tsaritsa kept his position as the first rank of the Fatui Harbingers. I talked about this in my last video, so I won't go too deep with this one. The rest of the story is what happened during our journey in Luna 1 to Luna 4, and there are interesting bits along the way. To put it simply, we learned that the Harbingers joined the Fatui all for their own personal reasons, but we have no idea why Sandrone joined in the first place. One of her final entries of her diary seems to imply that her reason to join the Fatui is because of the Tsaritsa's plans all along, which seems to have aligned with Alan's, or at least in a way similar to Alan's points of view. Of course, I'll get to this in a bit because this in itself is a very deep rabbit hole. Speaking of Alan, we also learned that during her calculation to save Colombina, it happened to be Alan's birthday as well. Another thing is how the Traveler is an important asset in order for her formula to work, which in this case is similar to how René tries to save the world. For a brief reminder, the Narcissus Quartz questline happened by having René attempting to become a descender. To him, that's the only way for the world to be saved, an entity that can rival or change the fate of this world. Knowing how it works, it's no surprise why Sandrone has to step in during our battle with Dottore and sacrifice herself, because the Traveler has to survive. The Luon Notar links her connection with the Traveler who is a descender, therefore it has enough power to fully drag Colombina from the moon's reflection. During this time, Sandrone planted a false formula within her body and planted Wanderer's core inside Polonia instead, along with the real formula. She also programmed Polonia to instead protect Sandrone. He has to protect himself. Finally, the final line, which I find interesting, is where Sandrone installed a data destruction function if she falls below the critical threshold, which could mean when she is revived, she's likely going to forget her past life as well. Now of course, that on its own needs a deeper deep dive, but this is where Sandrone's whole life finally ends. Now let's start with theorizing, analyzing, and speculations. The very first thing that made me think why Sandrone even joined the Fatui are two things: Alan and the Saritsa's plan. So both Renee and Alan are children from the Narcissus Quartz Institute, and after the events of the Cataclysm, both of them have a desire to save the world, more specifically Fontaine from the impending drowning. As they get older, this desire continues to nurture inside them, but both have completely different ways of thinking. It all started with Renee, who wanted to save the world by all means necessary, and even experimented on one of his friends, in this case Carter Sherbius, to see if he could save him or not helping after his research in Girdle of the Sands, where he found Kaenvian technology and the world formula that only points to one thing: the world will be destroyed and is going to be even worse than during the Cataclysm. So it's no longer just to save Fontaine, but to save Teyvat. In the end, Renee believed that the only way to save the world is by having a variable to prevent the impending disaster from happening. I'll spare you the details because the whole thing is just super complicated. Sandrone agreed with me on this one and has little to do with our video here. But just know that Renee's beliefs in saving the world is by having a descender to intervene, and for one to become a descender does not need to be from the outside world either. In fact, Renee tries to become one himself but fails after we defeat him. Alan's view in saving the world, however, is different, as he believes that there are other ways to do so without having to rely on the power from the outside. The flood in Fontaine's prophecy will happen, and Alan was the founder of the Fontaine Research Institute in order to save everyone. He did so by creating machines, developing the Arc system, which is now known as Numa and Usia, and in today's day and age, his discovery is now used as the main source of Fontaine's power now that the oratories no longer worked as intended. Regardless, you might see some similarities between the Saritsa's plans and Alan's plans. Both of them want to save the world without having to rely on power from the outside, or in other words, not relying on the power of the Abyss. Of course, the Saritsa's plan doesn't necessarily mean to save the world per se, because her plan is more so burning the old world. But her plan, as implied by other Fatui Harbingers, say that it's a benevolent one, as it is to free the people from the shackles of the heavenly principles. This might be something that Sandrone eventually realizes, and for someone who has been with Bologna for a very long time, it's no surprise if she eventually realizes that the unknown that Alan tries to calculate is related to Teyvat's fate. He literally asks how to calculate the fate of this world after explaining Polonia's reason to exist, and for her to join the Fatui eventually should relate on this specifically. Speaking of that, this could also relate to her project that is long overdue for approval. So, it's already ongoing, right? But she didn't get financial approval from Pantalone, since her project could likely relate to divine the fate of Teyvat using Bologna. It's no surprise if the tourist plans were accepted first because he has a higher chance of success. Literally, look at what happened during the Archon quest. But I think there's also a reason why Sandrone's project got a long overdue, and that is she did not take account of the sender's power. She only realized it being an important asset after she tries to calculate how to bring Columbina back, where the power of a descender is necessary to make all of it happen. Now, there are strange words that you'll encounter when we were at Sandrone's calculation scene, where she mentioned 4 orphans, chemical marriage, and tree model. Now, the whole thing of that scene is just way too complicated even for me to understand, but I tried my best to research this. After reading Renee's ridiculous amount of mumbo-jumbo bull crap and watching Roosevelt's video, this is how it goes based on my understanding in the simplest way possible. So, the 4 orphans are what you might be the most familiar with, as it refers to 4 specific elements: memories, wishes, soul, and persona. You might hear this from Minslip's video where she theorized this might be the new rules of Teyvat once the Traveler became the new heavenly principles per se. Personally, with how the lore goes lately, I find this a little bit unlikely, but I do think this still remains relevant because these 4 orphans became a relevant subject for Sandrone to research on, as Albedo found interest in them to calculate the new world formula on: life, death, time, and space are the representation of the world, but memories, wishes, soul, and persona are the representation of humanity. These four orphans are needed in order to become reason, or what in the Narcissus Croyd's questline says, that these four orphans made the Holy Blade of Narcissus Croyd's born into being. The Holy Blade doesn't need to be a blade, but it could be anything as long it is the embodiment of reason. Or what Renee says, it could even be a golden-haired traveler. Another thing that you might find interesting is how the world formula that Renee created is based on a real-life formula called the Tree of Life, or Kabbalah as per Jewish tradition. To put it simply, I'm not an expert on this, so please don't attack me. The top is divinity, while the bottom is physical world. Genshin's term is more or less the same, where the four orphans are the representation of humanity on the bottom, while the top is the representation of the firmament. The world formula that Sandrone created is the same as the one that she sketched, and it so happens to progress downward instead of upwards. In the Kabbalah, going down means you are bringing divinity into the physical world, and in Genshin's case, bringing an outside variable means you are bringing that power into Tevat. Sandrone states that she can only complete 90% of her formula, but has to rely on everyone else for the 10%. It's the same with Renee's notes about his sermon talking about the chemical marriage. Observe and compute the pathway displayed in the guidance anagram. Solve the first half of the equation, but leave the second half unattacked. In other words, the power of a descender is needed in order for the formula to complete. Pull the moon down from the false sky by Farka, Alekino, and Nicole. Then the travelers reason to bring Columbina by bringing the Luonotak as close to the moon as possible. At the final statement of Renee's sermon, it states, the subject is always and can only ever be a consciousness itself. One who is free from the weakness of consciousness bows neither to the gods nor death. None of them bow to the Torre, who is a god the moment they faced him. The rest of the 10% is us all along, because it's not by calculation, but by a reason to save Columbina. Traveler as a descender is the important variable in that formula, as he is the one who descended from beyond the firmament. Now that you think about it, the four orphans now make a lot of sense, don't you think? Because all four still relate to Columbina's parts as well. Memories relate to her authority on the Frost Moon, wishes relate to her body that is protecting Notcry using the Kuvaki, soul is self-explanatory as it relates to her divinity stuck inside the moon's reflection, persona is her forming as a moon goddess, and reason is everyone's will to bring Columbina back. Now don't take this too seriously because, like the words of Roosevelt, these are more like magic spells than anything else, and I really can't agree on the truer statement than that. However, just note that the formula is meant for finding a way to find Columbina, and to act more as a guide until it triggers something at the end. What is that something? I don't know, magic I guess. So this part of the video, I admit, I think will make you dislike me, but this is just a theory, okay? If you don't like it, that's fine. I am just here to spew my nonsense like I always do, alright? After the Archon quest ended, Sandrone and Polonia's core were then brought back to Fontaine's Research Institute. Likely the time where Sandrone will be rebuilt once again. With that in mind, it's safe to say that we will return to Fontaine eventually to meet Sandrone and Polonia. But I think there's a crucial problem here. You guys can already guess how Genshin works by now, but their storytelling is not as straightforward as you might think it will be. There has to be a storyline and drama for you to get attached to. They are crucial to represent a shiny new character that will be meta-divining and demanding you to waste your money on, so go check Lootbar for that. Which is why I believe the moment Sandrone is revived, she will likely forget her past life as Sandrone. The reason I say that is because of the final line stated at her note. So basically, she is planning to return as she continues to upgrade her failsafes. However, the line before that refers to her installing a false core and data destruction function. It's safe to assume that the data destruction function is destroying the false core that she planted, but it's worth noting that even Columbina couldn't sense her operating at all. Her key just stopped, all because of a technique that is required to bring Columbina back. You know, this reminds me of the simplest way for one to fix a device. Not too long ago, I bought a new phone, right? It's Poco F7 Pro, by the way. F8 doesn't exist in my country just yet for some reason. I need it because I have to record some Enfield footage, and my phone is screaming for me to replace it as fast as possible. Immediately after I bought it, I locked myself with a brand new password I just placed because I forgot how the pattern goes. Literally just 5 minutes after placing it, I forgot. Thankfully, it was still brand new, so there's no important data on it just yet, and there is an easy fix to this without having to go to the phone store, and that is by completely erasing the phone's data. Another similar incident also happened on my laptop a few years ago where I realized I got hacked. So my best solution is to completely erase every single data in that laptop with zero backup, and thankfully my laptop is fixed. Albeit I have to start all over again for my college projects and re-downloading all of my games. So I think it goes the same with Sandrone here. She is planning for survival, but that comes at a price where she has to delete every single data log that she experienced throughout her life. You know why I even say that? It's because of an irrelevance line in her notebook. She can't feel guilt. Now this is where I have to go with my storytelling brain a bit because the rest of these are purely speculative without a lot of basis. But I think this line will be crucial on how Sandrone will return. It will likely relate to a few things in her life: Alan, her life as a Fatui Harbinger, her friends, and Marianne. Besides, she just disappeared when they present Sandrone on the T's character screen, which of course this relates to how they'll present her. This reminds me of Wanderer all over again because he eventually deleted himself from the Irminsul. He is a clean slate, but he himself forgot what he did until the interlude Archon quest, obviously. From what I see, Sandrone will be somehow similar to that, but unlike Wanderer who can't remember his past because his actions still happened anyway and his core is by using the Irminsul, Sandrone's is human-made, so it's possible the way to recover her memories will be a lot more complicated. In fact, I think we will teach her how to have human emotions again, but this time, we can teach her the new emotion that she is struggling with, the feeling of guilt. That's storytelling, right? I know they will touch on that eventually because it is the most complex feeling for an animal or machine to feel. Remember what Columbina said, in the water, the future mirrors the past. Since Sandrone is no longer the Sandrone we used to know, this means that her reflection in the water is going to relate how she is going to play out the moment she is playable. Or maybe, just a huge maybe here, but Anne and Oceanite Marianne will play a role when Sandrone is playable. At the end of the day, Sandrone is related to Marianne, and who knows? Maybe just like Columbina, who was born using a primordial water, Sandrone too will be reborn or recreated using the primordial water.